do a kind of quick spoiler-free review for one of my favorite books growing up. Honestly, still one of my favorite series at the very least, and that is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone by J.K. Rowling. I have long since lost, and by lost I mean recycled, my original Harry Potter books. I currently don't have a physical set. This is borrowed from my mom. My original set was very well read and very well loved by everybody in my family, and as such, they fell apart pretty dang quick. So we didn't bother holding on to them. We got a better set. And this really was one of the books that defined my childhood. The following series really ended up defining my childhood as well, but it all started here. It's a very good read. It's short, it is sweet, the pacing is pretty good through most of it, and this book does a really good job kind of establishing that secret magical world, and there's always a sense of whimsy and wonder when it's described, and I really like that. It just added a really fun element to reading. And the plot itself, while it has been done before, it was interesting, it was engaging, and it was very well written and really did a good job of setting the tone and setting the scene for the following series. That's all I'm really going to say in summary. I'm going to go into my likes and dislikes. As usual, I'm going to start with my 3 likes. The first of which is I really enjoy how well the characters were set up. Although they fit into stereotypes, they really were allowed to grow a little bit as the book progressed, as well as just having really nicely established personalities, which really give you a good sense of where the character is going to go, even though in the following books they don't get as pigeonholed into these stereotypes as other series can do. My second like is actually the explanation of Quidditch in this book. For being a magical game and a game that didn't exist before this series, J.K. Rowling does a really good job of explaining it so thoroughly that I have never, ever had a problem picturing what each Quidditch game would look like. At worst, I just couldn't figure out what kind of stands they would have. But the game itself, I understood the function of each ball, of each player, and I understood the rules as a whole really well based on the concepts she explained with Harry and Wood very early on in the book. And then my third like is that the writing is very accessible. This is really a middle grade book, but the writing is just, it's very simple, it's very straightforward, but it's written in such a way that it's accessible to a multitude of audiences. I know I read this first as a child, but my mom read this with me and she first read it as an adult. And we got similar enjoyment out of it, meaning that the writing is just, it's very well done and it's meant for a very broad audience. And with that, I am done my likes. I'm going to move on to my 3 dislikes. The first dislike is the ending. In my opinion, it was just a little bit rushed, but that in part has to do with my second dislike, which is how slow of a start this book has. I forgot how long it took us to get to Hogwarts. And don't get me wrong, the stuff before that is very interesting. It's important to the story, the tone, and a lot of Harry's character building, but it is slow, and it is not magical, and not at Hogwarts. Because of that, I really felt that everything once we got to Hogwarts was much more condensed and much more rushed, especially in the ending. And then my third and final dislike, which is probably the most minor of all my dislikes, and it's some of the inconsistencies that I came across. You don't notice them as much, I think, in the original read-through that you do of this book, but after you've read the series or you come back and you reread the book again, I did find that I was more likely to pick up on inconsistencies as I went. They weren't enjoyment breaking, they were nothing major, it was just a few things here and there that just bugged me a little bit when I came across them again. With that, I will move to my characters. The characters, I'm really not going to touch on any of them specifically here. And as I mentioned in my like, all the characters are really well established. They all kind of pan out into general stereotypes, but J.K. Rowling left a lot, and I mean a lot, of room for growth. And she did have a few growth arcs for a number of characters. They weren't large, but they were a little bit, because let's be honest, This is taking place over a single school year when kids are about 11, so not as much growth there as you would get later on when the characters themselves were quite accessible. They were very easy to connect with on many levels. So many of these characters ended up being kind of my favorite characters in books, period, for such a long time, because there were so many different aspects to these characters that I was able to latch onto at different parts of my life. Because of that, I've always really enjoyed the majority of the character work done in this series, and that really became evident when I went back to reread this book, and I instantly reconnected with young Harry and young Hermione and young Ron. And that's all I have to say about the characters. I'm gonna move on into a very quick wrap up. I'm hoping I won't drone on too long, although chances are I will. My overall score for this book is 4.5 out of 5. It is a very solid entry into what ends up being a very good series. They set up so many things so well in this book. They set the characters, the world, the interactions between the Muggle world and the magical world, or lack thereof in some cases. And there's just a sense of whimsy and wonder with every aspect of the magical world that it just pulls you in every time you read it. And I absolutely adore that. And I absolutely adore that these books still have that magic for me as a reader, even as an adult, having read this series a number of times before. The world, the writing, the characters, they're all so accessible because of the writing. And I can't credit J.K. Rowling enough with putting out this kind of installment, especially when it's the debut for such an impactful series. She did an amazing job, and I really enjoyed my read through of this again. Even though having read through it a number of times, I'm starting to pick up on more inconsistencies, I really don't find that it takes away from my enjoyment of the novel overall. And with that, I will leave you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.